And the award for the coolest sounding anime attack name goes to My Hero Academia for the United States of Smash! Let's just get straight to the point. This episode of My Hero Academia was an absolutely epic anime experience. All Might absolutely went past the very brinks of his limits to deliver one of the coolest attacks that I've seen from the entire frigging series, not to mention one of the coolest punches that I've ever seen. And like I said at the beginning of the review, wow, has this got to be the coolest name for an attack that I have ever seen. The United States of Smash. It was always really funny before when All Might and Deku would actually call out the name of a state or a city from the United States and combine that with Smash, but this is the entire US of A, and it kicks all sorts of ass. As does this episode right here, which ultimately was very simple and, hilariously enough, also had immediate resolution. Basically, this was a big final standoff between All Might and All For One. Not to mention, we get the official confirmation that Tomura Shigaraki is indeed the grandson of Nana Shimura, who is All Might's previous master and also former wielder of the One For All ability. And as I predicted, the reason All For One is doing this is because, well, it's the perfect revenge against All Might. However, when he ends up telling him this, it kind of ends up giving him the edge in battle. It sort of reignites the fire within him, allowing him to go beyond his limits in a way that we've never actually seen before. This combined with the support of all of his teammates, which include not just Edgeshot, not just Kamui Woods, but even Endeavor shows up. And wow, you know, Endeavor's always been a really cool character, really cool looking, but his actual character, let's face it, he's always been kind of a douchebag, especially with the relationship that he has with his wife and son. We get to see an Endeavor who genuinely looks up to All Might, and we get to see that he truly was inspired by him in every way, but also recognizing that he is on an entirely different plateau than him, something that he hasn't even quite reached yet, and he demands that All Might gives it his all to take this guy down. Gran Torino shows up, man. Pretty much everyone shows up to witness this amazing event. The news is filming, everybody's cheering on All Might. It's insane. So All For One decides to bring pretty much everything to the party. That's when he decides to combine a ridiculous number of quirks to enlarge his arm into some sort of ridiculous Akira Resident Evil transformation covered with spikes and hilariously gigantic. And he decides to just immediately start attacking All Might, who's still suffering and still kind of frail. He's like, one of his arms is completely all beefed up, and he manages to block the attack, but then he transfers all of that power into the other arm, basically just completely wrecking this one and turning it into a friggin' windsock. And that's when he proceeds to not only punch this guy back, but then come back with his biggest attack possible, where he quite literally enlarges himself yet again and unleashes the United States of Smash. One massive ridiculous punch, which absolutely wrecks everything in the immediate area, and believe it or not, it defeats All For One. This guy was introduced to be like the end-all be-all villain of the series, but he just got completely tanked by All Might. Now, this does come at a very massive price. Unfortunately, it looks like he's probably never going to be able to utilize his quirk ever again. Now, I almost thought that he was gonna die in this episode. In fact, I was watching this episode with a friend who was also pretty convinced that this could be the episode where All Might's gonna kick the bucket. And I really didn't want that to happen. I want him to stay around, and I loved his declaration that he still needs to reprimand Deku for everything that he's done. He needs closure. He's got unfinished business. This just pumps him up, allowing him to defeat All For One in such a glorious scene. It's also worth mentioning that we finally get some flashback sequences of Nana Shimura, and all I can tell from her character is she was incredibly influential in terms of what All Might's personality is like. The reason he's always had such a big, ridiculous smile is because of the lessons that she actually imbued to him. That, and I also loved the flashback sequence of her with Gran Torino on the roof. I don't know why it is in anime, it makes no sense, but for some odd reason, when characters in anime are like these old, short, frail people, when they were younger they were always super tall. I don't know how he shrunk so much, but it was kind of weird seeing him in his much younger days. But Nana Shimura is just a really interesting character that I want to learn a little bit more about, especially what her actual connection fully is to All for One. Like, what really is the story and the history behind these characters? That's all still a mystery. The episode ends, though, with All for One actually being captured by the police, which I thought was really surprising. All of the other villains have escaped, of course, and I have a feeling this is not the end we have seen of this character. They're probably going to bust him out of jail or something. They have to at this point. We have to see more from this character, especially because you know we have to see a confrontation between him and Deku at some point. The episode does end with All Might on news, everybody actually seeing his true form for the very first time, and that's when he makes a declaration out to the villains that you're next. However, this is also sort of like a subtle message to Deku, preparing him for everything that he's going to have to inherit for the future, because now that All Might can no longer use these abilities, it's all now up to Deku to take down the villains. So, what's the rundown on this episode of My Hero Academia? Man, this episode was just chills-inducing. I was watching it with a friend, and like we were freaking out the entire time watching it. The music cues, the animation, just all of the emotion and voice acting from the characters. Finally getting to see more of All for One, learning about his motives by transforming the grandson of All Might's former master into the ultimate villain is just so underhanded in the best way possible, and of course it makes him a really fun and over-the-top villain. Also, I love that we finally get some more close-ups of what his actual face looks like. It's basically just pure skin. You get to see some form of eyes are there, but I'm not sure how this guy actually is able to see or even do anything. It probably has something to do with all of the multiple quirks which he has actually been able to absorb in his body. But of course, the star of this episode is none other than All Might himself, the poster boy of the entire series next to Deku, and this was a really big moment for him, and people were telling me that this was going to be a crazy episode. They were hyping it up a lot, and wow, it totally did live up to all of that. In fact, the last two episodes have been fantastic, and to a greater extent, this entire season has just been perfect, in my opinion. This episode was tops, man. I loved it. The animation was great. All Might was really inspiring in this episode, how he gave everything his all, and it just sent chills down my spine the entire time, and even made me get a little misty-eyed. It was just perfect in every single way. I'm sure there's some flaws in there if you're actually trying to find them, but as far as like entertainment value goes, this was a super solid experience of My Hero Academia, which is why I'm going to give this episode a 5 out of 5. I loved this one, but I'd love to hear your thoughts about it, and you can tell me all of them in the comment section below. What did you think of the big final battle between All Might and All for One? What did you think of the United States of Smash? Do you have any favorite moments from this episode? Do you think that All for One is actually going to return at some point in the future? And will Toshinori be able to utilize the One for All ability? We'll just have to wait and find out, but we can start a conversation in the comments section. So thank you guys for watching this review. I'll see you guys next time, and as always, stay down, baby.